What is up, everyone? Welcome into the Fight HQ podcast as we're here to talk UFC Vegas. 81 goes down tomorrow there inside the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. It has been a crazy week in the world of mixed martial arts. I was, of course, as always, I'm joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. I was saying this on my show yesterday, Pete. There's so many things that have happened in MMA. We all basically forgotten the fact of Bobby Green starched Grant Dawson in 33 seconds.
Yeah, this sport's so strange, and shit that happens sometimes shouldn't happen, and that's why you have to just always expect the unexpected in this thing. From last minute replacements to short notice fighters to crazy outcomes. I mean, we've literally seen it all. Injuries. That's why this sport is so damn exciting. But very frustrating at the same time because, I think out of 10 times, I think Grant Dawson does implement the correct game plan to get it done. But, hey, that's fighting.
Yeah, man, it happens. I mean, that's why I think we say it pretty much a majority of our shows here. That's why MMA DFS is such a tough DFS sport because, literally anything can happen. Of course, we're going to break down these fights coming up here probably in the next hour here, breaking down these fights. Of course, as always, appreciate you tuning in, whether you happen to be watching us live or if you're watching or listening to us after the fact, whether you're watching us here on YouTube or if you're listening to us over on the podcasting platforms. Of course, we do have our DraftKings contest that is live. If you're in our Discord, the link is already in there. It's also in the link of this show. So get in that our contest on DraftKings. Of course, congratulations to P Warner 5 taking down the contest last week where he had a fighter with 0 points. And it was not Ian Cutelaba. It was not Philippe Lins. It was Grant Dawson. Still took down the contest. So congratulations to P Warner 5 as he had Dober, Algeo, your guy, Nate Maness, Vanessa Demopoulos, and Orichi Lang. The other top scorers last week, by the way, Bobby Green, of course, getting that quick finish bonus, 127 points. Also, Carolina Kovacevic, how about going out there, get over 100 points. Then Joe Pfeiffer almost getting 100 points, getting at 97 points over there. So as we're here to break this one down for you, of course, I mentioned you got our Discord channel, totally free to join. Great community to talk about what's going on in combat sports. And, of course, it's I was actually watching a little bit at that UFC press conference yesterday about USADA. Oh, that is, it's getting interesting.
Yeah, it sure is. I mean, what the heck? Behind closed doors, we don't really know what happens as far as discussions and everything. But my goodness, this is going to get ugly.
Well, breaking news into the pod. We have lost a fight, and it is not Christian Rodriguez. Charez and Lacerda has been canceled. Brent Fitzgerald announcing it. That's a medical issue for Lacerda, non-weight cutting issue.
Okay, Jason. I've been working my ass off, and I know you've been doing the same. And this guy, Lacerda da Silva, has received so many damn opportunities over time and time again. I don't know if he's the smartest fighter out there because he's just navigating, doing enough to stay within the company. I mean, basically, pulling an act last time of, possibly trying to relax in a choke. Recognizing the referee, picking his arm up, going limp, recognize, you know what I mean? He's still, and then he acts like he's okay. This guy has backed out. I mean, he's winless in 4 or 5 fights, and he's still getting an opportunity.
He's had 5 UFC fights. I mean, look, you could say the same thing for Ashley Yoder. I think she's 3-7 in the UFC.
Yeah, but women's MMA is different, right? They lack depth sometimes, and I just don't understand how is this guy getting opportunities? If he sticks around after this, I'd be very, very surprised. And it's very frustrating for Charez and all these other fighters that are kind of clawing their way up to get a UFC opportunity. When you got a guy who's somehow, I got no hate against the guy, but it's just it's crazy to me. And that was a fight that was going to be pretty damn popular for the slate. So, I'm kind of happy it's off, and it makes me refocus some of my ownership and allocations and everything. But, man, oh, man, this guy's how much money has he made from no shows or just missing weight or it's crazy. I don't know. Don't get me going.
I will tell you that was actually the Suarez and Lacerda fight was one of 4 fights that I had highlighted in terms of an ownership play this week. And I was looking, obviously, I was looking at Edgar Suarez because I really liked him to go out there and get a finish. So, I mean, we can kind of talk a little bit about game theory here. I mean, obviously, when I'm thinking about my game theory and you know, I'm looking over my sheet and some of the things I've already highlighted on this one is, you know, obviously looking at the fights that have low ownership, you know, whether it's low ownership on one fighter or overall ownership on the fight. I mean, you know, like they're you know, like look, you know, I look at a fight like Emily Ducote and Ashley Yoder. I mean, I think Ducote's ownership should probably be higher. I get why people maybe don't want to get there because of the price point women's MMA, but you know, I feel like that's a great opportunity for her. You know, I understand why people may not want to get to Chris Gutierrez just because of the low volume, but you got to remember he was preparing to take on Montel Jackson. Now you take it on, you know, Heli here. I mean, it's a little bit of a step down in competition. So that one kind of sticks out to me a little bit. The co-main event ownership, I think, is also something that I'm looking at. But when I just did my first dummy hand build lineup when I was putting together the Fight HQ contest, I was like, this is a really easy week to construct lineups.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And a lot of weeks it's difficult to construct lineups. I mean, if I'm looking at the salaries, right, like something that sticks out to me is clearly the high finishing upside of Terrance McKinney, but also the volatility that surrounds every single fight. And then we got some like questionable fighters within that range. You got Tainara Lisboa, massive price tag. Emily Ducote, you know, you have Chris Gutierrez. So like there's nothing really. It's clearly McKinney in a tier of his own as far as upside is considered for the 9K options. But as far as ownership, I really do like some of these allocations that I'm seeing, and like with the Shirez and Lacerda De Silva fight getting canceled, I'm trying to figure out how people are going to pivot, and I think people will pivot to a little bit of Chris Gutierrez rather than target women's MMA. Just kind of like what I'm thinking. Or use that extra salary to help spend up for the upside of Terrance McKinney, despite the volatility. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I think like Ducote for me, I love the fight for her, and I think that her ownership should be higher. I was actually kind of like not concerned, but like surprised that Shirez's ownership prior to the cancellation wasn't higher. I mean, I was looking at it, I was like, I thought that, you know, given how we saw the first fight going, De Silva was going to be patient, a lot more patient than we were accustomed to, that he'd probably come in with 35-40% ownership. And that was not the case. So very, very easy slate to build lineups. And I'm really torn on a lot of these fights. So, you know me, I'm always transparent. I'm going to need your help, Jason, as always. But yeah, let's get through some of these fights. And I want to see where you lie on some of the matchups.
Yeah, I mean, some of my thoughts on game theory is like I look at, you know, what do we get out of Adrian Yanez in terms of, you know, bouncing back off that Rob Font loss, taking on Jonathan Martinez. I mean, Martinez is a guy that's just not a high volume guy, so he always kind of concerns me in terms of a DFS play. But there are some, you know, that 7.4K and below fighters. Like, you know, I mean, look, yes, his nickname is the damage, and he takes a lot of damage, but I look at Darren Elkins as one of those pump plays this week just because of if he gets TJ Brown to the third round, we have typically seen TJ Brown slow down. So, like, he's someone that I'm looking at as a play. I mean, McKinney and Marotte, look, we know we're getting Terrance McKinney. I mean, if he could go out there and very easily win in 60 seconds, but if the thing gets to the second round, all of a sudden you're like, uh-oh. Can this guy win a fight after the second round? You know, I look at someone like a Lisboa as another interesting 9,000 option this week. I do like her to go out there and get a finish. And, you know, and Christian Rodriguez, and we'll talk about this here in a little bit on that, you know, misses weight by 4 pounds. The fight is going forward, at least at this point. You know, he's being fined 25% of his purse, but that's probably going to be ultimately a situation where a Nevada State Athletic Commission doctor is going to decide whether they're going to allow him to continue on and fight. And but yeah, I do think there are some options. There's a couple plays over on Prize Picks that I really do like. I've got 3 plays over at Prize Picks that are going to be my top card for tomorrow. We'll talk about that as we do go on. But Pete, let's get right into breaking down these fights. The main event, we got Sodiq Yusuff taking on the veteran Edson Barboza. Barboza is a plus 140 betting underdog, -165 for Sodiq. Sodiq is 8,700 on DK, $21 on FanDuel. Edson Barboza, 7,500 on DK, and $17 on FanDuel. And, Pete, one of the things as I was starting to kind of look into this fight, the one thing that really stuck out to me about Sodiq Yusuff is it's, this is that big step up in competition for him to really, he had that loss against Arnold Allen, but when you look at his strength of schedule and his wins, Alekseeva may be his best victory.
Yeah, I mean, for his UFC victories, it is. He had a hell of a fight against Arnold Allen, but like he needs a name attached to his resume. He is 6-1. It's about time. I mean, Gabriel Benitez at one point looked like a fantastic win. Andre Fili's a good win too, but Alekseeva has been a very tough out and kind of had a resurgence within the featherweight division. He's 6-1 in the UFC, fighting a true veteran, Edson Barboza, who's 17-11. We all remember Sodiq Yusuff by breaking into the scene on the Contender Series and going up against Mike Davis. So, I really, really loved the showing in that fight. I mean, you saw how he was in an absolute war, and Mike Davis is a stud, an absolute stud. I mean, he outlanded Mike Davis 111-77. Had a knockdown, and you knew that he had to bite down on that mouthpiece and go out there. And that's the type of fight he's probably going to have to endure here because I don't think that he can stay on the outside. Clearly, he's not the better kickboxer. He will be the better boxer in this situation against Edson Barboza. I hate that. I hate going against people, any fighters from American Top Team. The team is just absolutely incredible, and they're so well prepared. Barboza looks to be in phenomenal shape. Father Time is undefeated, and most of Barboza's fights he's losing or he's having to endure some damage, and then can he overcome it, or does he get finished? And I was picking Billy Q to go out there and beat him, and I really thought the pace, the pressure, and just the aggressiveness alone was going to make Barboza break, and Billy Q ended up getting flying knee countered. So, I still kind of feel the same way about Edson Barboza. Tough out, very tough out. But time and time again, we see him, if you put, significant pressure on Edson Barboza, put him on the back foot, crowd the kicker, it makes him very uncomfortable. He's not a counter striker. He's much better when he goes. So I think in space, he's comfortable. In space, he's able to, let his kicks go. And we've seen, Sodiq Yusuff at times not absorb strikes well. I mean, he gets rocked on the feet countless times. Arnold Allen threw a head kick that was partially blocked, and you saw Sodiq Yusuff on skates. Let me tell you, Barboza kicks you. He's probably going to knock you out. So I'm torn on this fight, and I think it's okay to be torn because, it's very easy to get to both of them. In a single entry, I think I'd have to side with Sodiq Yusuff just because of the youth versus the youth versus the experience. I'm still going to slightly side with Sodiq Yusuff. I don't like the fact that he's coming off of a major, back surgery or procedure rather. So I don't like his inactivity in a way, suffering injuries throughout camp and leading up until fights. And Edson Barboza's in a really, really tough training room too. So that they're going to have him prepared. I think the grappling edge is on Sodiq Yusuff's side as far as finishing potential. I think that the wrestling exchanges will be interesting. So yeah, it's a slight lean towards Sodiq Yusuff, but I'll tell you what, when I'm making lineups and it's last man in and I have enough, I don't have enough to get to Sodiq Yusuff and I want to target this fight, I'm fine with getting to Edson Barboza because I think there is a path to victory. He just has to implement it correctly. He can't get pressured. He can't have his back put against the cage. He needs to take the center of the octagon and be the aggressor and go out there and let his kicks fly, chop away at the legs, and just, not box. Because sometimes he gets into just, a boxing match. And that's just his opponents, imposing their will. And if he gets into a boxing match with Sodiq Yusuff, I think he's going to get knocked out.
It's one of these fights where I don't know if I'm going to necessarily make the main event a priority for me this week, but like when I look at it from a cash aspect, I don't mind getting to Edson Barboza as a way for salary relief just because of, the possibility of this thing going 25 minutes and being a 15-minute fight. But, I think for me, it's also one of these things of, this is that litmus test for Sodiq Yusuff of, are you that top 10 fighter that a lot of people believe you are? You bring up great point about coming back from injury in this one, so it's an interesting one. I mean, I do side with Sodiq Yusuff as going out there and getting the win, but I think when you're talking about cash games, head to head, those type of contests, Edson Barboza, a guy I don't mind getting to, but I think in that that upper 8 range, I think there might be some other fighters that I might want to get to a little bit more than Sodiq Yusuff just because of that finishing upside. And then looking over Prize Picks, nothing really sticks out to me over Prize Picks. I mean, if I was probably going to do anything, I would probably be looking at the more than 16 fight time minutes on Sodiq Yusuff. His significant strike is 72.5. I mean, if you think this thing's going to go 25 minutes, at 72.5, he's probably going to eclipse that number. Fantasy score of 103.5. It's one of those things of on Prize Picks, I've really become very selective in what I'm doing over at Prize Picks of, finding those 2 to 3 props that I really like and maybe kind of, like I might sprinkle in a 5 or 6 player card just to kind of get crazy. MMA, it's so goddamn tough to hit six legs. It's just really tough.
Yeah, for sure. I was trying to, when I'm at work, right? Like I have some dead time, so I'm just trying to like think about, game theory and everything. I'm like, okay, say this goes 25 minutes. What's the likelihood that they pay off? And I think it's really hard for a 25-minute fight not to be optimal. It just is, right? Like unless it's completely back and forth and then it comes down to just the final round or something like that. I think it's really tough for a 25-minute fight, if it goes the distance, to not be optimal. Just it all comes down to salary too, right? Like, I think it's kind of at that like no-brainer salary, but it's it's kind of like teetering on that line. It's if Sodiq Yusuff say drops the first couple rounds or whatnot, and he gets a third round finish, we talk about it all the time. Like I can see that happening where Barboza's tough to deal with early, and then Barboza's slowed. I don't know who to really favor in a 25-minute fight. I guess I'd still have to say Barboza, just because of the experience. But like, I don't know. It's very tough. And then I try to wrap my head around what's the likelihood either one of these fighters get 100 points. And I think the 100-point ceiling is less likely than normal. And when you take previous cards into consideration, main event underdog's been killing it. They've been absolutely killing it, and it's been ruining everything. So, I mean, you can definitely make a case for Edson Barboza training at the best gym in the world, fighting a guy coming off a back procedure who's been slightly inactive. So, if you want to just look for the facts, Barboza's fine given his price tag.
And you say it every week on the show. Target underdogs in the main event and co-main event, and you definitely want to look out for it there. Of course, we appreciate everyone tuning in here. Be sure to smash that thumbs up button. And if this is your first time checking us out on YouTube, if you can subscribe to the channel, we really much appreciate that. We're typically here on Thursdays or Fridays. It's kind of based on myself and Pete's schedule of how it does work out. Of course, you can also subscribe to the show on the podcasting platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, rate, review. We appreciate everyone tuning in. And, if you want to take advantage of the tools that Stochastic has for MMA, we do have an offer in the show notes as well. I know there's been some people taking advantage of that. We greatly appreciate that because that does help support the show here. So we do appreciate that. So let's move over to our co-main event. It's a female matchup. We got Jennifer Maia taking on Viviane Araujo. Araujo a plus 130 betting underdog, minus 155 for Jennifer Maia. Maia is $8,500 on DK, $17 on FanDuel. Araujo, $7,700 on DK, and $12 on FanDuel. And this is one of those fights that it's, to me, it would be an ownership play more than anything else if I'm getting to it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, like, I think it's a close fight. I think it's a fight that most likely goes the distance. You have Jennifer Maia, a fighter that's been around for a while, 6-5 in the UFC. Viviane Araujo is 5-4. In the UFC, but like if you look at their careers, you definitely can say that Jennifer Maia's she has the experience edge. I mean, she's fought for the title. She has some big wins. Marina Moroz, a fighter from American Top Team, She has a victory over her. Casey O'Neill, an up-and-coming prospect and a fighter that looked to be very, very dangerous when she mixes in her wrestling. She has a victory over her. She's fought Manon Fiorot, Caitlin Chukagian, whereas like Viviane Araujo, her best performance is probably in the loss to Alexa Grasso, and that's 2 fights ago when she did go the distance. That was a hell of a fight. She scored 71 fantasy points in a loss, threw a ton, 264 significant strikes, but that's largely due to the 25-minute nature. Landed only 126 of them. I mean, we see fighters land 100 plus in 15 minutes. So, I mean, it's not that impressive. It's just, it kind of goes back to what I was saying of how hard it is for a 25-minute fighter, if it goes the full distance, to not be optimal. And then she went 2 of 10 in the takedown department. I think for the most part, she banks on winning striking exchanges and then being the slightly better grappler than a lot of her opposition. In this fight against Jennifer Maia, I don't think she's going to be able to implement that same game plan. You saw her go up against Amanda Ribas in her previous performance where she only threw 115 significant strikes in a 15-minute affair, landed 46 of them. And it's like, even if she does get takedown, she doesn't have the best top control. And it's just, I don't know. I feel like she's kind of like stalling out inside the division or possibly within her career. Maybe this is the fight that she needs to kind of kickstart her career, because Jennifer Maia will leave you opportunities to do so. But like, you got Maia on a 2-fight win streak, you got Araujo on a 2-fight losing streak. I'm gonna go with Jennifer Maia here at 8,500 to win a decision. I think she's gonna win 29-28. Give Viviane Araujo the first round, and then Maia's probably going to come on second and third round. It's a fight for me that I agree with you. It'd have to be an ownership play. Just what's the ceiling? Like, what's the ceiling? What, 80 points? Maybe. I mean, Maia did score 91 in her previous fight when she was priced at 7,700 against Casey O'Neill. But like, I don't know, man. I just feel like there's so many better options, and I'm always kind of looking at fights saying, can they get me 100 points? If not, then I'm okay with matching the field or being slightly underweight. But yeah, if it's a low scoring slate, 91's fine. So I'm picking Jennifer Maia. Knee jerk reaction. I was gonna be going with Viviane Araujo, but gonna go with the momentum of Maia here at 8,500 to get it done.
Over on the prize pick side of this, it's not one of my top plays, but I do think one of the nicer plays on this slate is a significant strike prop on Jennifer Maia. It's 80.5. So when you look at her past couple of fights, she had landed 145 against Casey O'Neill. She landed 109 against Marina Moroz. Then she in her fight against Manon Fiorot, she only landed 37. But she has hit this number most recently. So to me, I think that's if you're maybe looking to maybe add that third piece, fourth piece, maybe a fifth piece into a prize picks play. I think Jennifer Maia going more than 80.5 significant strikes would be a number that I would look at. Next up, we got a matchup, and I think, Pete, this is probably one of my more interesting matchups outside the main event on this fight card, and that being Jonathan Martinez and Adrian Yanez. Yanez is minus 105. Jonathan Martinez minus 115. Martinez is 8,000 on DK, $16 on FanDuel. Yanez $200 on DK and $15 on FanDuel. And really, I mean, look, we saw the rise of Adrian had, but I mean, obviously, it was not against the best competition. Then of course, he had a huge step up in competition, doesn't go his way. So to me, it's about how does he bounce back. And for Jonathan Martinez, I like Jonathan. I mean, he is. One of the things about Jonathan is he is more terrified to do interviews than he is to actually fight.
Such a soft-spoken kid.
Dude, yeah, he's just one of those guys. He says it. He goes. I would much rather go fight the baddest man in the world in the cage than have to sit and do an interview with somebody. It's just something he doesn't do. But my one concern about him in this matchup, even though I think price point this is to me is a fight we got to target, is just can Jonathan Martinez be active enough?
Yeah, I mean his output's not bad. I mean his output's like, if you go and you look at average UFC fighters, I mean it's pretty high output. It's just that Yanez's numbers are significantly higher, because he's been in wars, even if they haven't lasted that long. So it's been like like he got pieced up against Randy Costa and then came back and threw a crazy barrage. And, you think about his performance over Tony Kelly and, the split decision over Davy Grant. And, that's a mutual opponent is Davy Grant, where Yanez has a split decision and Davy Grant knocked out Jonathan Martinez. I have to tell you, Jason, I have not been the biggest Jonathan Martinez backer. So, like, being completely transparent, he's been a guy that I don't know why I just don't pick. But styles make fights, and I have to give him his flowers as to what he's doing right. And it's distance management. I mean, he has excellent range control. He is not just a guy going out there and brawling, and he's just coming up lucky with outcomes in finishes or in victories. He's going out there and methodically, outworking his opponents, sniping them from the outside, staying within kicking range. And then when his kicks are landing, he's stepping in and landing boxing combinations. But it's the kicks that give everybody problems. So it's like front kicks up the middle, knees up the middle, round kicks. He's an excellent kicker, and he chews up those legs, as evidenced in the Cub Swanson victory, where Cub looked horrible and Martinez scored 126. And now you see Cub Swanson, he's not looking bad. So MMA math is weird. You can't use it, and you can't really have significant bias in certain matchups, because I didn't think Said Nurmagomedov was going to have much of a problem with Jonathan Martinez, especially if he wrestled early and often. And Martinez was able to go out there and get a victory. So you have Martinez here on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-fight win streak over Zviad Lazishvili, Alejandro Perez, Vince Morales, Cub Swanson, and previously talked about Said Nurmagomedov. And you have Yanez kind of stumbling by facing his first true step up in competition against Rob Font. We picked Rob Font in that fight. That was a kind of too much too soon. And Rob went out there and, starched Adrian Yanez. If Yanez can get into boxing range, he's going to win this fight. He's going to win this fight because I see Jonathan Martinez struggling in certain exchanges. He's gonna struggle with the speed of Adrian, the combinations where he digs to the body, comes up top. I remember when Davy Grant was out there and they're just swinging hooks, and he chin checks Jonathan Martinez, and then you think back of, like, it's a long time ago, so I don't want to hate on Martinez, but like going up against Andre Sukuta, who I know really well, pretty solid striker, can implement the same game plan that Adrian Yanez is capable of. It's just Yanez has to get inside the kicker. So this is kind of like a question for you, because you might know more than me, but like, if there's people within their camps to emulate each other pretty well, like, does Adrian Yanez have a crazy kicker to go out there and help him prepare about closing the gap? You know that Martinez is training with very talented strikers as well, between Chris Gutierrez and everything. But like, if Yanez is able to deal with this in the training room, I actually think this is a winnable fight for him. And I think the masses are going to want to get to Martinez, and I kind of want to go the other way if that's the case. And I'm seeing some lower ownership on Adrian Yanez. If Yanez stays on the outside, we saw what Randy Costa did to him. We saw what Rob Font's able to do. But I do think that from just watching footage, he passes the eye test for me a lot more than Jonathan Martinez.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really leaning toward Yanez, and just like you, when I saw that ownership, I was kind of like, I thought it'd been reversed. I would have thought that Yanez would have the bigger ownership, but to me, it's a price point thing. Now, one of my favorite plays on Prize Picks is involved in this fight is the more than 11 and a half fight time minutes in this one. For some reason, I think this thing is going to hit late the third round. I really do. If it doesn't go all full 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't hate it. I think it's a decision fight. Or possibly a late finish fight. And the reason I think so is because they're going to have to download each other's game plan and have to process, the talented, opponent across from them. I don't think they're going to be able to go out there, walk across the octagon and just get rid of them. I think it's going to have to be, all right, let's make some adjustments inside the cage, between rounds, what's working, what's not. You're getting hit with a lot of front kicks. You need to close the gap. You know what I mean? Like, I can definitely see Yanez struggling early and then making some adjustments and pulling away late.
Next up, we got a matchup between Andre Petroski and Michel Pereira. Pereira is a minus 205 betting favorite, plus 170 for Andre Petroski. Petroski is 7,600 on DK, $13 on FanDuel. Michel is 8,600 on DK, $18 on FanDuel. And Pete, this is really the first fight that I look at, and we start talking about potential, various groups we might put in Fantasy Cruncher.
Yeah.
And when we talk about Takedown City, if I'm Andre Petroski, that's got to be the game plan here.
Yeah, it has to be the game plan, or it should be. I mean, like, this is a middleweight, not necessarily an experiment, but kind of just like he had no other choice. Michel's struggled to make welterweight on numerous occasions. He's a massive, massive guy. I do think that he's better suited for middleweight. We think of when he made his debut, he looked fantastic against Danny Roberts, and then in a short notice opportunity, we saw a guy, and I believe we actually were correct on this years ago, of picking Tristan Connolly to beat him. Mm-hmm. And Tristan Connolly able to kind of just nullify what Michel Pereira is the best at. So there's a game plan where you can make Michel Pereira human, and that's closing the gap, making him tire out, making him wrestle early and often, because we've seen him exhaust himself at times. On the flip side, you have a true middleweight in Andre Petroski, who's been undefeated in UFC, picked up a nice KO finish over Michael Gilmore in the third round in his debut, Hu Yao Zhang in the third round, crazy submission finish over Nick Maximov, and a decisive victory over Wellington Turman, and previously just going up against Gerald Meerschaert. So, I do think that this is a very interesting fight for Michel to be kind of debuting, within the middleweight division. My knee-jerk reaction is Michel's too well-rounded to struggle with Andre Petroski. And then the more I started to think about it, I'm like, okay, well, if Petroski just goes out there and says, I am going to wrestle and wrestle often, I like him here. But he kind of has a tendency to think he's a better striker than he is, and he wings power shots recklessly with his chin up there. We saw what Gerald Meerschaert was able to do in certain situations. I mean, he did rock and drop Meerschaert in that bout, but a much more crisper striker in Michel Pereira, who's going to be looking for the finish, who's going to be throwing various attacks. I personally like Michel Pereira here at 8,600. But as far as an underdog pool, I'm going to include Andre Petroski in that group because he's got slate breaking ability, and we've seen the path of how to beat Michel. This is a middleweight experiment, and I think it's one where we can take advantage of it one way or another. I think you're going to need this fight. Does Michel pass the test at middleweight? If you think he does, I think he's kind of, lost in the shuffle here at 8,600. And then if you think he's going to struggle, Petroski should have more ownership than he does currently.
When I look at Michel Pereira, I mean, obviously making 170 is a tough thing for him. He may be a guy that's really stuck in between two weight classes. If there was a 175-pound weight class, it'd probably be ideal for him. So, we'll see what he looks like at 185. But when you look at Petroski, what you love about the Takedown City aspect of it, I'll give you the numbers. 4 in his UFC debut against Gilmore. Then his next fight, he goes out there and gets 4, which, by the way, had 6 submission attempts in his second UFC fight. Did not have any against Maximov, and then he had 8 against Thurman, and then 2 against Gerald Meerschaert. Of course, obviously, you talk about drastically different styles when you talk about the Cachoeira style that Michel Pereira does have here. But to me, if you're creating a Takedown City group, whether you're talking about in a Fantasy Cruncher or any type of optimizer, he's got to be one that you put in there. Of course, if you're just joining the show, we did lose a fight. It was going to be the next fight we were going to talk about, Edgar Chairez and Daniel Lacerda. Of course, Lacerda has a medical issue. It's not related to his weight cut, so that fight is off. So next up, we do have a fighter who did miss weight, and he missed weight by 4 pounds, and that is Christian Rodriguez, who is a minus 160 betting favorite, taking on Cameron Saaiman. Saaiman plus 135. He's 7,800 on DK, $14 on FanDuel. Rodriguez, 8,400 on DK. And $16 on FanDuel. And, I know there was a comment a little bit earlier, asking if you're shocked by Cameron being an underdog here. I know my guy Pete was a little shocked here because when we were talking a little bit before the show, this is the one underdog you really talked about.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that makes me interested in Cameron Saaiman is just activity and volume. And, when I look at Christian Rodriguez, it's kind of like his patience is kind of like, I don't know, it's a double-edged sword because He's patient, right? Picks his spots. It's good to be a sniper, but sometimes when you're going up against a gunner who's just going to sling leather, you're going to be behind on the judge's scorecard. And, if you don't land those crazy damaging strikes, are you doing enough to win minutes? I think the clear minute winner here is Cameron Saaiman. I mean, he nearly doubles the strikes landed per minute based on the stats. Every fight's different. Christian Rodriguez will have a 4-inch reach advantage. But I also think like Cameron Saaiman just can mix things up so well that that's what makes him very dangerous. If he goes out there and he's like, all right, well, let's just see what happens. If my striking's land, I'm going to stick to my striking. If not, I'm going to just incorporate some grappling. And one way or another, that versatility, it works really well for him. And for a young guy, I'm very, very impressed. I mean, he was born in 2000. So Christian Rodriguez is 3 years the elder, but this is another prospect going up against Christian Rodriguez. So does Christian Rodriguez is he the prospect killer? Because like you saw what he did against Raul Rosas Jr. and in a 15-minute decision, landed 29 significant strikes, had a takedown, basically was able to just get in better position, had 7 minutes of control time. I don't necessarily think that he's going to be able to just wet blanket Cameron Saaiman, but I will kind of go back on that. So I just said that, but I will say that there was a time when Stephen Kozlow, as a losing fighter in my lineups, was able to go out there and pick up 5 of 9 takedowns over Cameron Saaiman and have 4 minutes of control time. So with 5 takedowns, he only had 4 minutes of control time, and that's because Cameron Saaiman's working back to his feet. He got 6 reversals in that fight. So I love guys that get reversals. I like guys that get knockdowns, people that go for takedowns. You can't apply those for future fights, but it's nice because some fighters in the UFC don't get any reversals and they just don't know how to get up or don't attempt anything. I'm going to side with Cameron Saaiman and the red flag surrounding Christian Rodriguez of missing weight by 4 pounds. 4 pounds, pretty big miss. Something went wrong. Either you're nursing an injury, either you pulled the weight cut early because it was way too tough of a cut. Who knows? So I like Cameron Saaiman here as the underdog. And if Christian Rodriguez is not 100%, I think this could be a situation where he ends up picking a victory up. So 7,800, I like the fight in general. I do like the fight in general. I'll be siding with the 7,800 Saaiman.
Yeah, I know we get this question a lot about when a fighter misses weight, and there's no real answer. I mean, but that is one thing that sometimes it may be a situation. I mean, 4 pounds, you kind of sit there and say, man, it makes you maybe wonder maybe there was some type of injury that maybe you couldn't get the road work in the past, say, week and a half to get the weight down, or, maybe it just got to the point where they just no more weight was coming off, and a decision was made early this morning or late last night of going, you know what? We're just not going to do it. We'll see if they take the fight. And I mean, look, and the reality is, for the most part, every UFC fighter is going to take that fight. Now, I mean, look, Stephen Thompson's a different situation, and I get why he does that because of the position he's in. But when you're talking about these type of fight night cards, the reality is, unless a doctor pulls it, every fighter's going to step up. I mean, that's true. By the way, I mentioned on the Michel Pereira fight, I do like the more than 11 and a half fight time minutes. I do think that's probably a 15-minute fight that's going to go between them. Next up, we got TJ Brown taking on Darren Elkins. TJ Brown is a minus 180 betting favorite, plus 155 for Elkins. Elkins is 7,400 on DK, $12 on FanDuel, and Brown is 8,800 on DK, and $18 on FanDuel. And Pete, this is one of those things where I kind of look at this and say, if TJ Brown doesn't get Elkins out of there within, say, 8.5 minutes, I think Darren Elkins becomes a very live underdog and maybe a great live betting situation tomorrow night.
Yeah, I don't think that he can get him out of there. I mean, I think that Darren Elkins is pretty damn tough to get out of there, right? Like, we know what Darren Elkins does. I mean, he was finished against Ricardo Lamas back in 2018, finished against Cub Swanson back in 2021, but Chad Mendes in 2013, Charles Oliveira in 2010. Like, dude, I don't think that TJ Brown has the same stopping power as some of these guys I just mentioned. Maybe some similarities to Ricardo Lamas, and that was in the third round, 14 minutes and 9 seconds. But that was a KO TKO loss. So, here's my issue. TJ Brown ruins fights for himself. He's very, very good. He really is. Offensively, he's got good hands. He's got good pace. He's got good wrestling, strong grappling, but I think that sometimes he overexerts himself. So like that pace is a double-edged sword. And against a guy who's such a motor in Darren Elkins, this kind of looks like a, buyer beware situation with TJ Brown. Know what you're getting yourself into. I know that Darren Elkins is very, very old for the division. He's taken a ton of damage within the career, given his nickname, and scored 36 against Jonathan Pierce, who absolutely mollywopped him in his previous fight. But if you still look at it, like Jonathan Pierce is a stud, and Darren Elkins landed 2 of 5 takedowns. Previous to that, against Tristan Connolly, he went 5 of 10. I don't think that Darren Elkins makes you feel comfortable anytime that you bet him or put him in your lineup because of like the he doesn't pass the eye test. Like when you're watching him, it's ugly. And it's kind of like, oh my God, he looks like he's gonna get finished, or he looks like, he's struggling really, but he doesn't quit. And I like that. Whereas TJ Brown, it kind of looks like he breaks at times. So I'm interested. I think that Elkins will be elevated in my underdog pool. 17-10 in the UFC, whereas TJ Brown is 3-4 in the UFC. I think from experience alone, you got to give Darren Elkins his respect. I don't care of how old he is. You have to give him his respect. I was actually thinking that he was going to be like 7,600. So slight value for Darren Elkins here against the guy who kind of ruins fights for himself, despite looking great early on. He's beatable. He is definitely beatable, and I side. So I'm going to still pick TJ Brown because I think he's going to win 2 rounds. But that 3rd round, man, I can see Darren Elkins coming on real quick and just putting it on TJ Brown. Does he break? I don't know. But yeah, so Elkins needs to be elevated in your underdog pool. Still picking TJ Brown, but it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things, and it's kind of one of these fights I look at and say, you've got, the veteran, the guy that's been around for such a long time, and, TJ Brown, TJ's probably been in the UFC, 3 years now, 2-3 years at this point. You do wonder, is TJ Brown, even though if his ownership was, targeted to be a little lower than what it's currently projected at, I might try to get a little bit more of him. But I mean, look, if this thing hits the 3rd round, you're going to be nervous. And if you look at the prize picks, Prize Picks thinks this thing is hitting the 3rd round because they've got the fight time at 12.5, takedowns at 2. They do have TJ Brown at 91.5 fantasy score. That, if I was maybe going to attack anything on this fight, it might be the fantasy score. I might be looking to go more. I think he could potentially rack up a ton of points over there on Prize Picks. Next up, we got Lisboa taking on Oliveira. Lisboa is a minus 330 betting favorite, plus 260 for Oliveira. Lisboa is 9,400 on DK, 20 on FanDuel, and for Oliveira, she's 6,800 on DK, $9 on FanDuel. And, this is actually one of the matchups that, in terms of the 9K fighters that I'm really targeting this week.
The level of UFC fights that we currently have to break down is very frustrating. I mean, like, come on, man. Like, years ago, I didn't have to sit here and rack my brain of what the hell is going to happen between, a C minus versus a C fighter. Like, it's just every week there's 3 or 4 littered throughout the card, and we're doing fights. Half the time, Dana White's Contender Series fights has better fights than what we're breaking down on UFC cards. What am I going to say here, dude? Tainara Lisboa, very, very solid Muay Thai practitioner. I hate the price tag associated with her at 9,400. I do think that she was in a very difficult debut against Jessica Rose Clark, but she was able to, show that she can land strikes, she can get takedowns, she can defend takedowns, and that she's going to look for a finish standing up, but also on the mat where she was able to pick up a 3rd round submission victory. And I like that. And I do like the fact that she's, a little bit more well-rounded than what her record shows. And Ravena Oliveira, low level competition, but aggressive. And sometimes aggression wins out. So I think that Ravena Oliveira is going to come out there really hot, try to hurt Tainara Lisboa. And because of Oliveira's inexperience within the big show, I think it's going to be Tainara takes over late, or Tainara has to weather the storm and then maybe breaks her at the end of the round 1. It's just 9,400, somewhat restrictive, but the low-level opponent makes it for she's getting a first or second round finish. I'd be very, very surprised if she doesn't. And if she doesn't, I don't have much hope for Tainara Lisboa going forward. I'm not in love with her striking despite being a Muay Thai champ. I think it's okay. But there's moments where I think that, her opponent can land shots just because she's a little too patient. She's measured, but I think that Ravena is going to land some shots, get to respect the Tainara, and Tainara is going to say, you know what, we're going to grapple. And this could be a sneaky takedown, city potential, couple takedowns en route to a submission finish for Tainara Lisboa. But I like the price. I don't like the price tag. I like the Tainara Lisboa to win the fight. I'm slightly getting contrarian in some of my builds with a fight I will get to, who I think kind of is going lost in the shuffle. We'll see if you agree with me, but Lisboa inside the distance, 9,400.
And then, of course, in terms of over on prize picks, nothing, I would probably, if I was going to do anything, I'd probably look at going less than 10.5 fight time minutes on Lisboa. Like you, I do think she's going to get a stoppage victory in the first or second round. Next up, we got Terrance McKinney. Of course, gets a short price opponent here, and that being Brendon Marotte. Brendon Marotte is a plus 400 betting underdog, minus 550 for Terrance McKinney. McKinney, 9,500 on DK, $23 on FanDuel. Marotte, 6,700 on DK, $8 on FanDuel. Of course, you're familiar with Brendon Marotte being up in that New England scene, guy that's been around here. And look, I just feel like we could just go find an older show with a Terrance McKinney fight, and we could probably just give the same analysis of live for a quick finish in the first round. But man, if this thing hits the 5:01 mark, you're concerned if you're a Terrance McKinney backer.
Yeah. So let me tell you a cool story about Brendon Marotte. I've known Brendon for years and years and years. I know Brendon because when I actually went out to Cowboys Ranch the second time to go out and train, I went with my buddy Nate Andrews, and we ended up getting there late. So we got there really late. Everybody was already asleep. I think whether we were locked out of the house or something, but Cowboy had a big school bus that he converted into like a commuter to back and forth to training for all the people that were staying there. But also at night, if a lot of people stayed over, that was where people slept too. So I remember getting in really late at night, had to be like 1:00 in the morning. And I met Brendon there at 1:00 in the morning, and we all had to sleep in the school bus. So we trained out in New Mexico for several weeks with each other. He's fought on my dad's card. He was young when I was training with him. But clearly he's gone on to improve and get better. He's very, very dangerous. He has good power in his punches. He's live to knock out Terrance McKinney. I'm telling you right now, he's live to knock out Terrance McKinney just because of the fact that McKinney overexerts himself. And even if he takes Brendon Marotte down, which is clearly the way to get a victory over for McKinney, is just take him down and look to submit him, as other amateur fighters have done, and like Adley Edwards was able to control Brendon Marotte by doing so. Look to get him on the mat and kind of negate the danger. Even off of his back, Marotte's going to be throwing everything. He's going to be trying to damage Terrance McKinney at every moment of the fight. So it makes me circle Brendon Marotte from a personal standpoint, just because I'm rooting for him. I want him to win. I think it's from a matchup perspective, it is a winnable fight. You just have to survive round one. But with all that being said, I do think that Terrance McKinney has significant wrestling upside, grappling upside, and I just hate 5-1 favorites. I really do. But at the end of the day, he's been preparing for this bout. Brennan's been staying active, looking for other opportunities, coming off of recent fights as well. But clearly, that's what McKinney needs to do, is look for takedowns early and often. And Brendon needs to just either get lucky landing a shot or take advantage of a very tired Terrance McKinney. But this is a fight I think you're going to need for a lot of your lineups, and the ownership makes sense.
If I got to put just got to be honest about it here. The one, my big knock on Brendon Marotte is the strength of competition. I mean, his last fight against Lionel Young, go look at Lionel Young's record. pretty much it seems like everyone in Northeast has been the guy he's competed against. I mean,
I was supposed to fight Lionel. I was supposed to fight Lionel years ago.
Yeah, I mean, Lionel is 11-21 currently. Just kind of give you some of his notable recent losses. Jay Perrin. That was Jay's first fight after his UFC X's. Joe Penafili, who's a guy that's been on the regional scene for now a little bit of time. He's fought Rob Font, Peter Barrett, Sean Soriano. I mean, go down the list of names here. I mean, if I was going to put any knock on Brem Marotte heading into this one, it would be that strength of competition on the regional scene just has not been there. He did have a canceled fight against Carvalho that was supposed to happen earlier this year. That was a fighter with a winning record. But if I'm going to put a knock there, and I mean, I'll say this: we're on Prize Picks, so significant strikes is 18.5 for McKinney. Fight time 3.5.
It's kind of crazy. I mean,
the fantasy scores 121.5. That is the one. I was doing the math today. I was like, okay, if he gets a first round finish, that's 100 points. He gets a knockdown, 12. So I need 10 more points to go more. Could he land enough strikes to get over that number? I feel like if you're playing more than 121.5 fantasy score on Terrance McKinney, you're going to be sweating that one out.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously I'm rooting for Brendon. Of course I am. He's a good kid. He really is. He can't wrestle with Terrance McKinney. He just can't. McKinney's very, very dangerous, but he can fight with McKinney all day long. And I feel like McKinney can break to the way that Brendon fights. Truthfully, I'm just saying. So I think that one way or another is going to be a massive score attached to this. So yeah, I mean, treat it accordingly. It's how's it any different than any McKinney fight? It's not.
Rinse and repeat. Yeah.
I don't trust McKinney at all. So, and especially when he's going up against the guy who's dangerous. So, the Dion Rubio win for Brendon Marotte was very, 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 very impressive. So yeah, I mean, the kid's capable. He definitely is capable.
I mean, look, Terrance McKinney, no matter what, I don't care who's standing across the cage from him. He's a boom bust play every week. He's like a heavyweight fighter. He's boom bust every week.
Well, it kind of reminds me. It's a completely different style, but reminds me of Kama Worthy. Yeah. Like, you know what you're going to get. Like, volatility, crazy exciting fighter. But a guy like me, like, that's a guy like I want to fight because you know he's going to give you an opening to win.
Yeah.
You know, like, he's going to screw himself a lot of the times. And it's going to be an interesting fight. I don't think it touches the third round.
Then we got a female matchup up next, which is Dixon taking on Irina. Dixon, she's a minus 150 betting favorite, plus 125 for Irina. Irina, 7,600 on DK, $15 on FanDuel. Dixon, 8,600 on DK, $16 on FanDuel. And Pete, is this kind of like your thought earlier this week, earlier in the show, where you're like, man, a couple years ago, I wasn't breaking down this kind of fight?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's 4 of them on this card. I mean, I hate to sound like a hater, but I mean, it is what it is. It's made MMA DFS very frustrating. Never mind the late notice scratches that have become, frequent occurrences and crazy just outcomes. It's been ugly lately. So trying to stay with it and push through. Irina Alekseeva is a fighter that we were very, very low on. And I think the market was as well. She went out and she showed out against Stephanie Egger. It was very weird how she did well in that matchup. She was aggressive, made Stephanie Egger uncomfortable. And anytime you have that's why I say aggression wins out sometimes. If somebody is pressuring you and you're not accustomed to that in your gym, and that could be like fighting in the small cage, and in your gym, you're used to fighting in a big open mat space. When people pressure you, you just continuously back up. And you don't have to feel that pressure of being somewhat claustrophobic of, oh my God, the cage is right there. So if you're not experienced in a small cage, it can break you with their pressure. And that's kind of what Irina Alekseeva did to Stephanie Egger, I didn't think that was going to happen. We have a very, very low level fight here where Irina, despite all her combat sambo accolades, she's sloppy, very, very sloppy. She throws combinations. I see tons of openings. She is a fighter who will chase finishes and put herself in bad position to go for finishes. So when I see that, it reminds me of a lot of my amateur fighters that are under my wing, where I'm constantly screaming at them about position over submission and also just learning how to be patient. When you see an opportunity, you have to weigh the percentage, right? Like you're going off of low percent techniques. Like why would you take yourself out of an advantageous position to do so? That's kind of what I see Irina Alekseeva doing in some situations. You got leg lock divers where people diving for leg locks. Mateus Mendonça last week just playing footsies with the guy I absolutely can't stand in Nate Maness, and just eating shot after shot. So like you have Irina Alekseeva, who's an opportunistic grappler, I think could actually work against her in this matchup against Melissa Dixon. And here's my thought process. Melissa Dixon's the unknown fighter, one of the unknown fighters, a part of this card. A lot of people don't want to go after her. She's in the price range where it's like, man, that's kind of expensive for a debuting fighter. Dixon throws very, very good combinations on the feet. Brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She's been working on her grappling a lot. Despite the accolades of Irina Alekseeva, I actually think that Dixon might win this. And I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive than the field just because of the unknown commodity that she has. You got Irina Alekseeva just beat a notable name in Stephanie Egger, but we've seen Egger quit several times now. So I kind of have like an asterisk a part of that. So yeah, give me the unknown Melissa Dixon to land solid combinations on the feet, and actually surprise some people in the grappling. And I think it's Irina's mistakes is what's going to make Melissa Dixon win this fight.
Yeah, it's one of those ones. The fantasy score of 78.5 is on Dixon is one that does stick out to me. Maybe if I'm looking to get a 5-6 player card over there on Prize Picks. By the way, I was just kind of going down the X timeline. So I always remember to say it's X, not Twitter. And saw an interesting one that Israel Adesanya is going to take some time away. He is probably a good idea. Probably a good idea.
I think it's a good idea because he hasn't looked the same.
Probably also explains why that apparently the winner of Khamzat Chimaev and Kamaru Usman will get the next title shot at 185 pounds.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. And how about my boy Khamzat Chimaev? I can't wait for that fight.
Dude, he's approaching a 3-1 betting favorite in that one, and I don't like the matchup for Kamaru Usman. We'll get into this next week. I don't like the matchup for Usman. I really don't. But
is that next week, Jason?
Yeah, that's next week. It's an afternoon.
Volk too?
Yeah. You have Volk and Makhachev. So that's an afternoon pay-per-view. So that's 2 o'clock Eastern is next week.
Oh shoot, I worked the night before, but okay, I'm all right with that.
So I want to say prelims start I want to say 10 a.m. because I got the schedule for the I got the schedule for the bar yesterday. I want to say it was 10 a.m. was the early prelims.
I got to work. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, it's for us in the bar business. It's actually not your traditional UFC pay-per-view. We get it a part of ESPN Plus for Business.
I would imagine. So, just kind of touching this real quick. As got somebody in the bar business. Do you think that is there anybody that shows up for daytime MMA? Like say it's
hard.
It's a noon card.
It's hard. It's easier this time of the year because of all the college football going on. At least here in Florida. I mean, I know traveling this country for for NFL football. I know like if I go to Connecticut, going out to watch a college football game, it's not like going out in Tampa to watch a college football game where the bar is packed. It's
there ain't nobody.
In Northern, it's fascinating to me. It's very fascinating to me. Like you go up to a northern state and you go out so I go to Buffalo a couple weeks, but that's a Thursday game. But if that was a Sunday game, we would probably go to a bar on Saturday night and it would be nothing like watching college football in Tampa on a Saturday night.
Right. Yeah, no, it's non-existent around here. I think that maybe people like hockey a little bit more than college football up around this area, but I was always concerned about how a business, if it does anything for business.
It's a tough, because look, they're not cheap for a bar to get. Let me just say that. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
we're not paying $80 for that pay-per-view. We're paying much more than that because it's based on your seating capacity. But yeah, it's it's afternoon pay-per-view, and of course we'll talk more about that next week. We got two more matchups here to talk about. We got Chris Gutierrez, who's a minus 290 betting favorite. He's $9,000 on DK, $19 over there on FanDuel, taking on Alatang Ali, who is a plus 235 betting underdog, $7,200 on DK, $11 on FanDuel. You were talking about the kickers of Jonathan Martinez. Well, this is his main training partner in Chris Gutierrez, and we know that's what Chris does.
Yeah, I was mainly thinking Jonathan Martinez, training with Chris Gutierrez is awesome. And it's probably what's elevated this game so much. They kind of both helped each other. Chris Gutierrez is very, very good in the outside, has good footwork, and his footwork is something that really results in a lot of his victories because he dances around, he feints, he moves, he goes one way, he goes the other. He chops at your calves better than anybody. The one thing I don't like about his defense is that he kind of leans back with his chin a lot at times. And, if somebody's able to finally get into the pocket, they're able to knock you on your butt. And we did see that happen in his previous bout against Pedro Munoz, who was able to, plant him down on the mat. And Pedro, after that, got the respect of Chris Gutierrez. And even though Gutierrez was still on the outside moving around, Munoz was a tough matchup for him because Munoz is pretty good at checking low kicks, and he pressures you. So Chris Gutierrez's number one go-to was a little bit more ineffective than normal. And then once he got knocked down, I don't think that he was the same. Now, a guy in Haley Alatang, I think is a tough matchup for Haley because of the kicks, the volume of Gutierrez, who nearly doubles the output of Alatang Haley. I think the path to victory for Alatang is mixing in the wrestling because we've seen Chris Gutierrez when he's put on his back or when he's taken down, he can be controlled. Everybody's been able to land takedowns against him. You had Danabak Gari, Felipe Corrales, rest in peace, Andre Ewell, Cody Durden. The Durden fight is what really makes me remember that. It was a ton of control time in that matchup, and Cody Durden had 6 minutes of control time, so able to take the back. Durden's a fantastic wrestler, whereas Alatang Haley, not so much. I'm just saying he can mix in close rounds by doing so. I think Gutierrez is going to be on the outside, chopping away, dancing his way to a unanimous decision victory over Alatang Haley.
Yeah, I mean, I like Chris Gutierrez in this matchup as well, and just kind of like you, probably a decision. And, it's just one of those things this is one of those fights that, it's not getting a ton of overall ownership, but I was actually surprised how much ownership Chris Gutierrez was getting.
Yeah.
Even though I do like him to win this matchup, but we always talk about that fancy score upside. That's where it's kind of my concern is with Chris Gutierrez in terms of this one. Then, of course, our opening matchup, we got Emily Dakota taking on Ashley Yoder. Ashley Yoder is a plus 310 betting underdog, minus 400 for Dakota. Dakota, 9,300 DK, $19 on FanDuel. Yoder, 6,900 DK, $9 on FanDuel. And Pete, I think the way to look at this one is, I'd really like Emily Dakota to go out there and win this matchup is, can you make a case for Ashley Yoder?
I mean, her grappling is always live. She's able to win rounds by getting takedowns. I do think that Emily Dakota is well-rounded, though. So, when you look at Emily Dakota versus Ashley Yoder, Yoder's best grappling upside goes against one-dimensional opponents. I mean, taking Angela Hill down twice, Miranda Granger 2 times. Outside of that, it's just split decision. Random Marcos 2 times. The strength of she's fought a lot of names, but I don't know. I don't think that they're of high caliber. I think that Emily Dakota here is one of my favorite fights from fighters from a contrarian standpoint. And the reason I say that is because I know that she can go out there and throw volume like crazy. I really like Emily Dakota here. To kind of go back, look at Jennifer Maia against Casey O'Neill. She was 7,700. She threw 349 significant strikes, had a minute of control time, had 0 takedowns, landed 145, and scored 91 fantasy points. 91. Emily Dakota in a previous matchup threw 270, so almost the same type of volume, landed 112, had 0 takedowns and only 11 seconds of control time against Lupi Godinez, who is a much better striker than Ashley Yoder. I think that there's 90-plus point upside here all day long for Emily Ducote, and given that price tag of 9,300, we need 100+. We need probably 110. I think from a sneaky perspective, I'm going to be much more aggressive on Emily Ducote to possibly pick up a knockdown, possibly pick up some takedowns, because even though Ashley Yoder is going to be incorporating some takedowns, I think she can get reversed. I think she can get taken down. She was subbed and finished as an amateur, which is a very long time ago, and she is 8-8. Emily Ducote's high volume could actually make her the sneakiest 9,000 option out there, because on a box score watchers, see Jessica Penne 76, Angela Hill 29, Lupi Godinez 46, and they think just like Jamar Chase last weekend, you're just not going to play him. And then all of a sudden, going to have a 50-point plus performance. And perhaps this is the week that Emily Ducote goes out there and picks up a pretty high scoring win. I'm going to take my chances just because I'm not in love with a lot of the 9,000 options out there to begin with. So, give me Emily Ducote to absolutely demolish Ashley Yoder in a contrarian, I'm going to stand by her type of situation.
Well, my favorite plays on Prize Picks is more than 88.5 fantasy score on Emily Ducote.
Yeah. See? Okay. I'm glad that you think so too. Because
right when you said it, right when you said that, I go, "Ooh, we are on the same path." I just when I was putting together my Excel spreadsheet and I put in the Prize Picks information and I saw it was 88.5, I was like, "Oh, like that's probably a core play for me on Prize Picks tomorrow." Like, and I'll tell you, one of the things that is a great thing to do on Prize Picks is, maybe you only like 1 or 2 on MMA, but then you can pair them up with, say, something on college football, maybe something, NHL is obviously, back in full swing. You got the NFL on Sunday. So it is a great way, maybe if you like 1 or 2, and that's also a great way if you do want to get those 5 and 6 player cards. That's a great way to do it.
So correct me if I'm wrong. The 2 Prize Picks plays that I heard from you that I love were Jennifer Maia significant strikes over 80.5 and Emily Ducote more than 88.5 fantasy score.
Those are 2 of them, yes.
I love those. Those are my 2 favorite ones that you mentioned. I'm probably gonna make a little trip, and I love that.
The other 2 that I really do like over on Prize Picks is the more than 11.5 fight time minutes on Jonathan Martinez, and the more than 11.5 fight time minutes on Michel Pereira, as I think those are probably both likely. But, I think, the other 2, I think you do like a little bit more there. Let's get into our straight up fight picks, and we'll answer some listener questions. The main event, I'll go Sodiq Yusuff.
Yeah, Sodiq for me.
I'll go with Jennifer Maia.
Maia, unfortunately.
I'm going to go Yanez.
Yeah, I'm going to go Adrian Yanez as well.
I'll go underdog number 1 in Andre Petroski.
All right. I respect it. I'm going to go Michel Pereira.
I would go underdog number 2, Cameron Saaiman.
Cameron Saaiman for me.
I'll go TJ Brown.
TJ Brown, I guess.
Lisboa. McKinney.
I'm rooting for Brendon. I just don't think he can stop the wrestling. So
yeah.
I'll say for straight up picks, McKinney.
Dixon.
Yep, Dixon for me.
Gutierrez.
And
Ducote
for me as well.
Let's get some questions in from Discord. Up first, it says, best punt play. Love the show, by the way. Best UFC content out there, hands down. Appreciate that, North Fork. I really do appreciate that. Best punt play. I think you got to look at it's, to me, Darren Elkins, or I mean, look, it's a boom bust fight both ways. But how do you not look at someone like a Brendon Marotte because of if that thing gets a second round?
Yep, I agree with you. The word punt makes you say anything less than 7,000. So like, I think in that category, it's got to be Marotte, given the volatility of McKinney.
Yeah, I'm with you on there. Value plays under 8K on DraftKings, and also asking about FanDuel cheapies. Under 8K, I mean, obviously, I think you got to look at Edson Barboza at 7,500 is someone that sticks out to me. Petroski at 7,600 is another one that I like him to win the fight there as well. FanDuel cheapies over there. I mean, Petroski at $13. I mean, that's to me that's got great value there. Cameron at $14, I think is another good value play over there on FanDuel.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that for the values under 8, it's got to be Saaiman, Petroski, women's MMA, so Alekseeva, Barboza, and Elkins.
Yeah, best takedown upside to me. Andre Petroski's got to be up there, and I mean maybe. And you've mentioned this point now a couple of times. Maybe you got to look at Terrance McKinney. I mean, you may only get one takedown, but maybe this is that fight where we do try to see him utilize that.
Yeah. So the reason I say that with Brendon is clearly because Brendon is dangerous on the feet, very dangerous on the feet, and we've seen it time and time again. So like McKinney, who doesn't have a brain in half of his fights. But if he had a brain in this one, you'd look to wrestle him as you did Farziem. Farziem's a stud, very good striker. And he went out there and picked up a first-round finish by incorporating his wrestling and getting a submission finish. That's what he needs to do, because anything else, it's kind of just like flipping a coin.
Yeah. Next up, rank the 9K options. So now we only have 4 9K options: Lisboa, McKinney, Gutierrez, Ducote. I would still put McKinney number 1 just because of the fantasy score upside. 2, I would go Ducote. 3, Lisboa. 4, Gutierrez.
Yeah, I would go this. Yeah, the same for me.
Yeah. Let's see here. I know there was a couple other questions. Let's see here. Thoughts on locking Cameron in a 20 max?
In a 20 max, it's good to be aggressive like that. I just don't know if Cameron's the guy to lock. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I think locking a fighter in 20 max is a very aggressive way to set yourself up for success. But perhaps the reasoning behind locking Saaiman would be the weight miss and the volume of Christian Rodriguez. So not something I'd recommend. I think it's interesting. He's an underdog, and Christian Rodriguez is skilled. So maybe he just didn't want to cut the weight. And then that's something we just don't know.
Andrew asking about if we're going to have a stack in the optimal. I mean, I'm looking at these fights and I'm going, where would it come from?
Main event, but I don't think that goes 25 minutes.
I don't. If I was going to label potentially 1 3-round fight, do you look at TJ Brown, Darren Elkins, saying TJ Brown gets up big in the first and second round, racks up a ton of points, and then Darren Elkins comes back in the third round, maybe gets a third round finish? I mean, I personally would not be stacking anything this week, but if I was going to present a case for a 3-round fight, that might be the one I would look at.
Yeah, I mean, in a 3-round fight, you still need the guy who's the favorite to win the fight. You need I mean, I guess it really doesn't matter, but it does to a point. You need the losing fighter to have a hell of a fight and just get screwed on the judge's scorecard. I actually think that's, if you had to pick a fight on the card, not the main event, that would be the one to stack.
Yeah, I'm with you in terms of that. That's kind of all the questions that we've got that have come in. Of course, we appreciate everyone who tunes into the show. If you're watching us after the fact and you do have a question, a comment, you can leave that right there in the YouTube chat. You can also always hit up myself or Pete over on X. Of course, I'm at Jason_Floyd. Pete is at Pete the Heat MMA. As I know I see these videos over on Instagram. I see my guy Pete over there. I see you getting that work in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Of course. So every day, just trying. I'm trying to figure out, like, I don't know, man. I just got to figure out what I'm doing as far as weight. So I'm a tweener right now. That's the problem. I'm a tweener. I'm between 55 and 170 as far as competition weight, because these welterweights are humongous, and getting to lightweight is going to be
bro. There's some lightweights
that are huge
guys.
Huh?
There's some lightweights out there that I think people would be
Yeah.
surprised how much they walk around at.
I'd be a massive lightweight as I was a massive featherweight. But you got the short, stocky guys like Chandler who walks around at 190 pounds.
Yep, I know another fighter walks around 190 pounds. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very aware of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you might know another one. You might know another one. Talk.
Oh, I mean, we're not getting dad bod over here, are we?
No, I mean, listen, I think it's just I don't know what the hell's going on. My bones are different now. I guess I don't know what the hell is going on.
Getting older. that weight don't come off as easy as it did when you were in your 20s.
Nah, bro, it don't. It does not. It's crazy.
Yeah,
And
but
I
of
used to
course,
be able to eat everything too.
yeah, man. I will tell you, as I kind of took soda out and drinking more water and things along those lines, I don't eat as much as I used to.
Yeah, because they say most of the time when people think they're hungry, they're actually dehydrated.
Yeah, there's I forget what the ingredient is in soda, but it's basically it's telling your brain you're still hungry, as opposed to yes, I don't eat as much. I did just get an air fryer, so I'm gonna be testing that bad boy out. Had some chicken wings in it the other night. They came out really good. So yeah, that's one of the new toys that I got. Dude, I look, I need to hit some tournaments this weekend. I just spent $4,000 in the Apple Store, so I need to take down some tournaments.
Jason? Damn.
Yeah,
my man.
New computer, new phone. Yeah, 4,000 out the door.
Yeah, I'm telling you right now, man, I need to hit a tournament. I need to hit an MMA tournament. I need it. The fam needs it. We all need it. We're due. But these cards, like the Kudulabo thing last week, like, okay, we got 2 minutes, but let's just talk.
Right.
Could the UFC do anything to kind of not, like, what's the point of freaking waiting? And then, the show starts, the lineups lock and all this and that. And like, you're just waiting for your broadcast to now break the news. Is that just like they want to break the news? They don't want anybody else. I mean, it did leak from what's his name, Martin a little bit, but like,
I think there's various things in that. I mean, that could also be one of those things where you got a medical issue where they're like, you know what, let's give this guy some additional time. Maybe they're going to feel better. They'll say that they want to fight. I mean, look, obviously the UFC, they do want to break the news. I mean, just an example of this is what happened on Tuesday night. They did not want that to leak out because they had not called Islam yet because he was in Abu Dhabi. They were waiting for him to wake up so they could call him, and they knew he was going to say yes, but they didn't want him finding out on social media, and so that's kind of the things out there, but it can be various aspects, I mean, of what's going on, but there definitely is part of it is, the UFC definitely wants to, I mean, obviously as DFS players, we just wish like, hey, just put it on your Twitter account, and say, hey, Leans versus Kutalaba is out. I mean, obviously DraftKings tried the whole late swap and we saw how horrible that went for them.
Well, yeah, because they had the timing of which fight was going to go out there, and the times were inaccurate because it's very difficult to predict how fights are going to end and what time they're going to start. Yeah,
I mean, to me, I think it's one of these things that if you're DraftKings, how could you implement a system for the MMA game to where like let's say lock is 6 p.m. where just throwing a time out there, and let's say it's 6:05, the UFC announces, fighter X versus fighter Y is off the card. And that the fights are not going to start for probably another 20 minutes or so. Give the chance, push that lock back a little bit. And so you give the people who have those players in their lineups a chance to swap them out. Because, I mean, look, there was lineups I had that I was like, well, those lineups are dead.
Yeah, that was all my lineups. It sucked.
It ruins the night of DFS play.
100%. And I don't think there's a solution. So I'm kind of just like shooting from the hip here, but like maybe there's like an emergency fighter to select a part of you got your 6 fighters, and then maybe kind of like for like fantasy football, we have IR spots and whatnot. Obviously you can't use those, but perhaps you have an emergency fighter to put in. The only issue would be that there's salary allocated to everything. So I guess that emergency, or maybe you call it an emergency underdog or something like that. And then like that, at least you could swap to that. So it's kind of like a best ball situation. I don't know the answer, man. I really don't.
And I don't think DraftKings knows the answer to the question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it almost seems to me, and I mean, this is just the way I view it. I think they just put their hands up in the air and just go, there's nothing we can really do. I mean, I think to me, one of my criticisms of late swaps is I think it was a move that was not beneficial to the casual DFS player.
Yeah. When
you're talking about playing in big tournaments where you're going up, a percentage of the field is quote unquote professionals. And, they start playing the percentage game of who's not going to be rostered, based on what they're seeing for. I mean, that to me is, that was one of my downsides of late swap was I think it was beneficial to that pro player and not beneficial to the casual, person that maybe he's only playing one lineup, maybe as much as maybe they have 5 lineups, I mean, I think it would be fascinating to know, like, what is the percentage of DraftKings and FanDuel player that only plays one lineup and maybe is only in one league, one contest or 2 contests. I got to think that's a decent number.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's why the 150s, you're at a disadvantage if you're putting yourself in those with one. I mean, that's a lottery ticket.
Look, and to me, when you do that, Pete, that's where you go in there and, you're taking chances,
Yeah. It doesn't mean you can't win. Some of my best wins are going in there and solo shipping. Just going in there and putting your lineup in there, and it's like, I did it.
Honestly, that's what I do on captain contest. I mean, I'm the first one to tell you I'm not a great captain contest player, but I'll go into the big GPP they have for the captain contest. I mean, usually I think it's like $15, $20, whatever it is, and I'll sit there. I'll do one lineup, but to me, that's why I like playing cash games. I like playing single entries, to kind of get away from those people that are playing the 150 maxers.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been that guy. So I ain't got no hate to the 150 maxers. I wish I was better at it.
Look, I've done it too. The problem is like I'll spend half my Saturday trying to create that 150 lineups.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if you're like me and maybe some of our listeners are like this. When if I'm playing 150 max and I'm looking at that CSV, I overanalyze the crap out of it.
Oh yeah. Of course. Oh, yeah. That's me all day long.
I mean, sometimes I just got to sit there and say, Jason, put in your settings in Cruncher, do what you want, and just tell Cruncher to do his thing. And just trust the process.
Yeah. It's the case. Thank you guys for tuning in for another show. Sorry our schedules have been crazy between, trying to hammer these shows out and in addition to everything else we got going on. But we really appreciate the support. From Discord to our YouTube channel. If you guys could subscribe to the YouTube channel, share the videos if you can, help us get the word out. Hit the like button. Let's try to get over 100 likes. And, the best is yet to come with the channel and for Jason and I, and would love to do more content in the future when our schedules kind of lighten up. And perhaps that's something that's going to happen in the future. So, yeah, but thanks, guys. Let's win some money. And please post your screenshots in the Discord. We want to see them.
Yeah, post those winning bets. I don't know if you saw the crazy bet that someone made. It was like they hit 4 first score TDs last week and for an insane amount of money. It was like a $10 bet. Like unreal. Yeah, that's hitting the lottery, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. And hell, I need to hit the lottery. So let's
I feel you. I feel you on that one. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Fight HQ podcast. As Pete said, we really appreciate you tuning in, and we're going to talk to you right here next week. We'll get you ready for UFC 294 on the Fight HQ podcast.